so happy today to have Anita Bartholomew here. Thanks for coming, Anita. How are you
Hi.
doing today?
Hi, Andy. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no
Good to
problem.
see you.
Yeah, I was just gonna give people a quick rundown. I met you at Stephanie Wynn's. She had a little party thing,
Yeah.
and she was on the show a long time ago, and I just wanted to shout her out because you guys have similarities in what you're kind of studying and
hmm
writing about and stuff. So yeah, shout out to her, and check out her episode if you're interested. Um, but yeah, thanks so much for coming in and tell me about how you got started because I just think your background is really cool and interesting. If people remember Reader's Digest, for me, it's like imprinted in my brain whenever I go through
Uh,
like Safeway checkout when I was a kid, or it's all through the 90s and stuff. Just so, yeah, like tell me about how you got into writing and your time at Reader's Digest and all that stuff.
I actually was working on the corporate side, the evil side,
Okay.
and I wanted to move from New York, and none of my clients would go with me, so I started writing for magazines. And I had met my old editor at a writers' conference, and I love writing about people. And he was talking about what constitutes a true life drama for the Reader's Digest. You know, the old man fights off bear in the woods
Mm-hmm.
and finds God, and bear and he go off happily ever after, whatever.
Yeah.
So he was looking for that kind of story. Another magazine I was writing for at the time, which has since gone away. Most magazines have gone away, as you know,
Yeah.
asked me to follow up on a story about a young woman who was attacked by her boyfriend and left for dead.
Okay.
And they decided not to run the story because the young woman was brain damaged and couldn't really, and they
Mm.
wanted to be able to do it as told to, as if she were writing it, although I'm writing it. So I said, oh, this would be a great one for Gary. I brought it to Gary. He loved it. They sent me out to Nebraska. I met everybody and I wrote for them ever since. So I can't tell you how many of these dramas I've done. I've also covered health for them. As you know, a couple of my stories have been made into TV movies, bad TV movies, but they're TV movies.
People love bad TV movies though, especially what was it? Was it Lifetime or what
One of them was Lifetime, and I think it was Lifetime. Something like that, one of those.
those cable networks or yeah.
Yeah, and the other was Netflix.
Oh wow, okay. That's
Yeah,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's very cool. Yeah, did it was it ever I don't know. I just keep picturing those little tiny because they're like the smaller magazines I remember, right? The Reader's
Yeah,
Digest.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're teensy tiny
That
magazines,
was
and
like
I'm
TV Guide was the same
yeah,
kind of
same
size.
size.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it still exists, but it's now like there are very few pages. The internet has kind of killed off the magazine.
Totally, yeah.
And so I could give you a list of all the magazines that I've written for in the past. They're all gone. Every one of them. Oh, no, there's one that's still around, I think. But
What was the kind well, I was just thinking like what was Reader's Digest main kind of thing? Because I remember reading little things in TV Guide, but I don't remember it was just life stories and that kind of thing.
it started off in the 1920s with um, Lila and I forget, DeWitt Wallace. Um, they decided to just take articles from a lot of other places and condense
Okay,
them and
okay.
put them in this little magazine. And eventually they started to produce their own in-house articles. But it started out with reprints from everywhere. Anything that was interesting anywhere else, they would take it, they would condense it, so it would be
Okay.
like half the size or a third of the size of the original. So people could get the understanding of what they were reading very quickly and get kind of like the entire gamut of what's going on in the world in this one little magazine
That's
instead of
cool,
reading
yeah.
15.
And it was weekly, monthly, or
It
what?
was monthly.
Okay.
Yeah. And international. And I have had my work translated into 20 or so languages that I can't read, including some alphabets that I don't even know which alphabet this is. Is that Japanese or I don't know, whatever.
That's very cool
But
though. Yeah. Yeah.
but I have some copies somewhere, and it is kind of cool. Like, what is this? I don't know, but
Mhm.
that picture, okay, I know which story it is then.
Yeah. Well, it's one thing to do, national stuff, but international is just no. That's crazy. Yeah, that's cool to do.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, and that was New York City. They were based in New York City at the time, or
They were in Pleasantville.
oh, California.
Actually Chappaqua, but
Okay.
post office spot called it Pleasantville, and it was kind of the perfect name for a place that the Reader's Digest should be from, right?
Okay.
Pleasantville. And the people there are still, because I know them, some of the most pleasant people you'll ever meet. Just a lovely family atmosphere. I mean, I was a freelancer and I got a bonus the first year,
Wow.
So
Yeah, I've freelanced and I know that's very uncommon. Yeah.
yeah. And then they put me on retainer and as contributing editors for a number of years. And then things started going south because the internet took a lot of the business over time. And at this point, um, they closed the Canadian
That
issue, I
version of it.
think,
Yeah.
maybe less than a year ago. I had recently written something for her, lovely woman. They're now closing the British edition,
Okay.
and it's just, everything changes,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely saw that, like, from my own time in the news industry with the newspapers having the same thing, and they're still
Hmm.
struggling with it, the few ones that are left, but it's like if you don't adapt, you're gone basically. And
Yeah.
but that's all really cool. Were you always just into writing?
Actually, no.
Okay. It wasn't your first kind of choice to.
I started off as a singer, believe it or
Oh,
not.
wow. That's cool.
And I did some off Broadway, and I guess my greatest claim to fame was some background vocals in Captain Kangaroo.
Well, that's very
You
cool still, yeah.
but I had a little boy and I was divorced and I couldn't do the late night gigs
Okay,
and
yeah.
so forth.
It is
So
difficult, yeah.
I went back to school and started writing.
And you're like, I can work with this. Like,
Yeah,
I can make a career out of this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's great.
I'm adaptable.
Um, yeah, so let's get into this. I know you have a new book you're working on. You have a number of books already out, I should mention,
Yeah.
which people should check out. Where was the best place? Just Amazon to find your book?
Amazon.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you have a new book coming out, which I think is a really interesting topic I'm interested in. And you're kind of focusing on the indoctrination of kids with gender ideology. Is that
Yeah, I
kind of the
guess
right?
that's a good
Yeah.
way to, uh, sexualization of kids as well as indoctrination into gender ideology. And the two kind of go together. And yeah, it's been all consuming for more than a year.
Yeah.
Um,
Because all
eh,
this stuff is just it's ongoing and it's been going on, and so I'm
mhm.
sure you're just taking it all in and trying to
Yeah. I had
research.
originally looked at it as a wider topic, but now um, it's speaking to a publisher who I won't name because we haven't signed a contract yet. We're really going to hone in on the kid factor.
Yeah. And that's really, we've seen a lot of stuff this year that kind of highlights some of that, I think.
Mhm.
And yeah, why don't we start with I was going to ask you about I just saw a stat this week and I wish I could have pulled it up exactly, but basically there was a huge spike post COVID school shutdowns of kids identifying with non-binary or
Yeah.
trans. I think it was specifically trans is the stat I was looking at, but
Yeah, I think that I hadn't seen that particular stat, but the stats that I've seen, you see it's kind of flatline and then it just goes like this, so things keep and during COVID, a lot of kids were very badly stressed.
mm-hmm.
They were locked down, they couldn't see their friends.
Probably scrolling on their phones a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it started before that,
Right.
certainly in schools, they were pushing it a little bit before that, but they were really, I think I'm not a mental health professional, obviously, so I can't speak to that, but I've spoken to mental health professionals who say that stress can, anxiety, depression, other mental illnesses can, push a kid into believing that they are the
Hmm.
wrong sex. And then you have all what could be more stressful than, we're all going to die, put your mask on, stay at
Right,
home.
right. Yeah. This kind of, yeah, overwhelming environment of
Hmm.
fear and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And isolation.
yeah. Well, and like you said too, this was going on because I had definitely heard about it before 2020.
Hmm.
I would say maybe 2015 or 16 it kind of
Hmm.
started, but what do you attribute that to? Like,
I think, uh, you know, I'm I'm looking at trying to figure out, well, where did we really begin to see the spike? And there are some communities where there was a spike earlier than this, but where you really start to see things take off is Bruce Jenner decides he's
mm,
a woman, right? And that's very glamorous.
it's kind of a model or like a
Yeah,
track for people
yeah.
to follow, you
And
think?
so it's very accepted and what have you. And then there was also the survey that erroneously claimed that children who weren't affirmed were going to kill themselves. So adults started tiptoeing around this, and there were books from, I forget the name of the organization. It starts with open. They were handing out trans friendly
Yeah,
books
materials or
to
whatever.
kids, for kids as early as pre-K, to the schools. And so they were populating the libraries with this. And it's hard to say, well, here's the moment when,
Right, yeah.
but now we see it. And the schools, I don't know whether it was virtue signaling or what, but every school seemed to, in even a fairly progressive or liberal city or state, seemed to want to do more and more and more and more. They were working on anti-bullying, and all of a sudden, anti-bullying just became pro-trans.
Hmm.
So that everything that was, like, don't bully each other now was, well, we'll just tack trans onto this and say, okay, we can talk about gender to kids because trans kids get bullied. Well, there are no trans kids, first of all.
Right, yeah.
A 6-year-old might be confused about his gender, but if you don't affirm that kid,
Right.
95% of them, by the time they hit puberty or they're a little further along, they're identifying as exactly what they
Hmm.
are.
Hmm.
And so, but so you just saw this, a lot of things kind of coming together at once.
Yeah.
So the fear of suicide, the virtue signaling, the celebrity, um,
One thing I always bring up with people, and I could be totally wrong about this, but we were talking a little before the show about other January 6th and Trump and stuff, and I'm not a big Trump fan. I'll just be
mhm.
honest. I don't think you are either, but I always attribute a lot of this newer woke stuff in education as like a knee-jerk immediate reaction to Trump, and that's kind of when you see a lot of this stuff start to kick up.
I
And
think you're right.
is that, yeah, you
Oh,
think
I
so? I don't
think
know.
you're right. I think you're right. I am definitely not a Trump fan, although I'm not a Biden fan either. So I'm equal
Yeah,
opportunity
right. I'm
non-fan.
and like everyone I've had on the show is the same way. Like, I don't want this 2024 election again. Like,
Yeah.
nobody wants these two people.
Uh, uh,
But
uh.
I think it's in a lot of the West Coast mind, especially. They think, hey, if our school teaches this stuff, it's kind of a kick in the nuts to Trump or what. Like they're
Yeah.
still
Well, it's kicking the nuts to somebody, but I don't think it's Trump.
somebody,
I don't think
right?
he's feeling it at all.
Yeah,
So I think you're absolutely right. This Trump derangement
yeah.
is, we are now allowed to do anything in the name of stopping Trump.
And
Uh,
especially because I was thinking too, because Europe has kind of rejected a lot of
oh,
that
yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, they are actually following the evidence.
Hmm.
What a concept.
Right. Like, and I wish I knew the name of it, but I believe the UK did a big study, right?
Yes, the Cass Review. The Cass Review was a study of studies, so to speak. So Hillary Cass pediatrician was assigned to look at all the material that was out there so far about transitioning children or children wanting to transition, children believing they were the wrong sex. And all these trans activist organizations were saying, oh, this science is settled and we know, children know who they are and blah, 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 blah. And other countries had done systematic reviews before and said, nah, science isn't settled.
Yeah, I don't
But
understand.
when you did it in the UK,
Right.
because they're kind of our, we speak the same
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
language, we share a lot of culture. It was like, yeah, people are paying attention. So she said, she looked at, I forget the exact number of studies, I'm sorry. But she looked at, let's just make up a pretend number. Say she looked at 100 studies and she found that 50 of them weren't sufficient quality to either consider. So she put those to the
Oh, wow.
side.
Okay.
And then she looked at the medium to higher quality studies. And she said, yeah, there's nothing here that says that giving kids cross-sex hormones, giving them puberty blockers is actually going to help them. And as a matter of fact, it might harm them.
Mm,
And in that case, we shouldn't be doing it. We shouldn't be doing this to children,
yeah.
because I am against experimenting on animals personally, but
Mm,
I'm especially against experimenting on children.
right. Human beings. Yeah, in
Yeah.
general. Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And there have been videos of there's a guy at OHSU who made a video basically saying, yeah, we don't know how it's going to turn out, but oh yeah, we're doing it.
Right. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was
It's just,
talking about the surgeries, but still, it's just like everyone, especially because of the major media, and I think you're right again with the Trump derangement. If he's against it, we're for it. Uh,
yeah. Yeah.
um, they make it sound like, oh, gender affirming care. Doesn't that sound sweet?
It
It's care.
has a nice ring
And
to
these
it.
are
Yeah.
children and it's life saving. And oh, we're just so happy to, stand by them and look at all those haters who don't want them to have that care. They don't know what they're talking
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. When there's so many things that just drive me crazy about that because, the science is settled. It's like that we don't have enough time yet to study like we need to study this stuff because it's very new and it's been only been happening for, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, this explosion. And
Well, here's the
studies take,
circular reasoning. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. We can't do a randomized control trial because that would be unethical, right? We can't
Mm,
experiment on kids, so we'll just give it to them.
okay. So just bypass the study. Yeah.
Bypass the evidence
Mm.
because we are believers.
Yeah. It just seems ludicrous to me. And
But yeah, I mean, when you look at some of the things that we know can happen to a child when they're put on, because surgery is the first thing that got to me. I mean, children having their breasts cut off,
yeah.
children, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Hmm.
They have no idea what breasts are for yet,
Yeah.
and they're
And
having them cut off.
I think a lot of people would push back and say, like, well, that's, first of all, barely never happens. That's the extreme example. But the other thing is, puberty blockers, in my opinion, for kids are very dangerous as
They
well.
are. So that's, I was going to say that. So I looked at that and it's not that it hardly ever happens. If it happens to one child, do you want it to happen to one child?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
Yeah, but it
and
happens a lot.
and these are still, I believe Lupron is still, is that
Oh,
what it's
yeah,
called?
it's still available here. And so you apparently know a little about puberty blockers. So yes, it's we don't have enough evidence to know exactly what the degree of risks are, but we do know that there's a black box warning on it.
Okay, what does that mean? Yeah.
Because it can cause brain swelling and vision
Oh,
problems.
wow.
We also know that in these very limited studies, say there's one case history study on a kid who had precocious puberty, which is what this is really for. And they tested IQ before and after, lost 10 points of
Wow.
IQ
Wow.
because the brain develops during
Right.
puberty. Skeletal problems. There were children who were in their teens getting osteopenia. There was one who was reported getting osteoporosis. obviously, if you're arresting skeletal development, you're going to have lower height. And you're doing this to children who are not yet sexual.
Right, right.
So how do they know what they want to be once they go through puberty? The evidence that we had from pre this craze was that, as I mentioned before, up to 95% of children in the studies that were done who were not affirmed or anything, they were just, they just said, I'm a boy, but she's really a girl, blah, vice versa. Usually it was boys. They'd grow up and they'd grow out of it.
Or, I was here, for men, they'd be a gay man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. 80% or so, I think, was, and this is off the top of my head, it could be wrong, but something like that.
Hmm.
Most of them were going to grow up to be gay, but some grew up to be bi, some heterosexual. So it wasn't set in stone. This is just kind of a normal, or not typical, but not abnormal thing that a child might do.
Yeah.
That's a pretty dress. I want to put that on.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, it's a kid.
Yeah. When the way you just said it also makes me think of like, man, everyone that I know, including me, had a horrible time in middle school. I think it's just an awkward time for all
Oh,
kids, and
yeah.
to
Yeah.
make a huge life-changing decision like that at that age just seems very
It's awful.
unwise and
And the thing
unethical,
is,
obviously.
you're talking middle school because boys do go through puberty a little later than girls. But
Hmm.
I spoke to Jamie Reed, who you may know.
I don't
She
know
was a
her.
whistleblower for in the Washington Children's Clinic.
Okay.
Anyway,
Okay.
she worked as a caseworker there, and I was asking her about a different topic, and I said, well, how old was this kid? And she said, oh, when 6. And I said, and she was put on puberty blockers probably when she was 8.
Wow. That
8.
is so young. Yeah.
And the awful thing in that case was that Jamie didn't believe the child even believed she was the opposite sex.
Mm.
It was something that was pushed by the mother.
So everyone around her except the kid
Yeah.
actually believed that.
Well, everyone was told by the mother this was true. The father was fighting it in
Okay.
court
Okay.
and losing because the propaganda that we've seen, this pro
Hmm.
gender affirming care propaganda, has been so powerful.
Yeah.
Well, judges read the newspapers, they
Hmm.
watch CNN, um,
Well, that's
and they have this idea that, oh, this is the best thing for the kid, and we don't want the kid to kill herself.
right, right.
So yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, and that's what I was just gonna kind of segue into is like there's this. The more you look at it, the more you see there's this crazy large apparatus of affirming systems, including education and medicine, and I don't know what else. Some parents probably that.
Yeah,
So it's hard to escape from that. I'm sure for a lot of kids who kind of get trapped into that kind of affirmation. But
yeah.
yeah, is it? Tell me about some kind of that school stuff that you
Oh,
found.
yeah. Well, this I wanted to look at because I've looked at schools across the country, as you can guess, but I recently did a public records request from Portland Public Schools, and this is first grade.
Yeah, yeah, and you showed me some
This
of
is
this
first grade,
before.
and I'll just read you what they're
Yeah,
teaching them in first grade.
and I'm glad. I always shout out people who do these records requests. I just appreciate your effort.
Uh, yeah, gender identity. Gender identity is that feeling of knowing your gender. You might feel like you are a boy. You might feel like you are a girl. You might feel like you are a boy. You might not feel like you're a boy or a girl, but you're a little bit of both. First grade.
Yeah, it almost like if you just heard that, it almost sounds like a sort of liberal arts poem or something in high school. That, but yeah, kids cannot process all that stuff
No. I
at
mean,
that
they're
age.
just, and the thing that I find.
And also, before you, I'm sorry, I just want to point out on the second page,
Oh, yes, yes.
she showed me before that there's
The
a
instructions to the first grade
yeah,
teacher.
there's like a list of genitalia
Right.
basically.
So we've got the vulva, the vagina, the penis, the nipples, blah, blah, blah. And this is the teacher's instruction guide or teacher's resource, body parts and functions. Vagina. The vagina is the canal leading from the vulva to uterus, blah, 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 blah. Flattened tube with its walls touching each other. The vagina has great elasticity and can adjust to the size of a penis or allow a fully developed fetus to pass from the uterus out of the body.
It's
How
just
many first graders really need to know
right.
that the vagina can adjust to the size of a penis? Now, it does say that the teacher can decide, it's up to the teacher to determine the amount and detail of information to share with their students
Okay, so there's some discretion,
in
but
ways that are age appropriate.
right.
But this is first grade.
Yeah, and the entire
How
page,
is any of this age appropriate
right.
for first grade?
Like I was just thinking when I was in first grade, I think I was learning to read. Is what I
Yes,
was doing,
yes.
you know.
And then they have in second grade, they have the very detailed, um,
Diagram or whatever.
yes,
Yeah.
I doubt that we can see this on camera
Yeah, I
because
mean you
it's
could hold up if you want. There's a camera
okay.
there, yeah.
But yeah,
It's
the little girl's body, and then there's the pretty much the view that you would get if you were a gynecologist and the
right.
kid was in stirrups.
Yeah.
And everything is labeled, the clitoris, the vulva, the vagina, what have you. But
I
that's
mean
not
it's
enough, right? So
yeah,
the next thing that you have to do is you have sticky notes. And the teacher has the children put the sticky notes on the correct body part. Like, as I said before, pin the tail on the clitoris, right?
right, right. That
First,
is just
this is
insane, yeah.
second grade. So, yeah, we're not
Yeah.
getting there in first grade. We wait until second grade.
Okay.
But why does a second grader need this information?
Yeah.
Maybe you want to talk to kids that age about reproduction, you know, yodel, ovary. I mean, I think that's more of a fifth grade thing, but maybe they do it earlier. But
It does I mean it
this is just a
seems
little
it
weird.
seems pretty crazy to me.
Yeah, that's
Um
a little weird. Everybody, who I've spoken to about with this, I've said, What do you think? Is
yeah.
this appropriate?"
What do they say?
I mean, not that it's not going to be appropriate at some age, m- at some point. Yeah.
It's just yeah, first graders should be, making toys and or
Yeah.
playing with toys and tetherball and stuff. I don't know.
And this, the vocabulary lesson usually is dog, cat, school,
Right.
mommy, daddy,
Yeah. Yeah.
clitoris. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking a couple things. It's one thing that always bugs me about this stuff too is that I guess what they're trying to do is cement this kind of identity. Your whole world revolves around identity, and
Yes.
but the thing that drives me crazy about that is the more activist type people kind of lean into this, they're just forming harder stereotypes of what a woman is or a man is. Because do you know what I'm talking about? I just
Absolutely
wanted,
agree. Absolutely. This is what it is. It's like we are going backward in time.
yeah, because they say, well, if you want to be a woman, then you gotta, change your body and all this stuff to look like her and wear the clothes and all that. But
Hmm.
really, you're just building a stereotype of
Yeah.
what you think a woman is, and
Yeah.
that's usually like I don't know, a very drag-esque kind of woman.
Yeah. I mean, I would not qualify as a woman today,
Really,
actually.
is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I I own a dress. It's in my closet somewhere, maybe two or three. I'm not really sure. Haven't looked at them in a while. I enjoy carpentry.
There you go. Yeah.
I've done some electrical work, even a
Hmm.
little plumbing. Um,
And that's something I hear too. Is it like, is this the tomboy is just no more like a thing of the past? If this is because then people in that world would say, well, just go through with transitioning if that's how you feel.
well, you mentioned the stereotypes before, and I'll tell you something that one of my interviewees told me. She was very upset when her daughter came home from her sex ed class, and they came home with all these identities, but they weren't yet talking about trans identities. They were talking, oh, I'm pansexual, I'm asexual,
Right.
I'm agender, I'm bisexual. Well, these are 12-year-olds. They're not any kind of sexual,
Right. They're
they're
may they're
12.
maybe holding hands with
Yeah.
somebody or something. Yeah.
They may have romantic dreams about some boy or some girl, but
Yeah.
they don't know what that
They're
means.
still waiting for
S-
a kiss or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So, yeah, they're definitely not pansexual. That
Yeah.
we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the parents were invited to a presentation by the outside contractor that was doing the sex education for them. And they had, of course, the big white screen and the slides, and they showed Barbie on one side and G.I. Joe on the other, and about a dozen intermediate genders. And if you weren't Barbie and you weren't G.I. Joe, well, then you were one of these intermediate genders. I'm not Barbie. Are you G.I. Joe?
Yeah. I don't think I'm exactly G.I. Joe, but yeah.
So, hey, who knew we're trans?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just kind of, I guess that's kind of this idea of fluidity as well, of like you can kind of change from day to day, and
But it's all stereotype because, yes, we change from day to day because we are human
mm-hmm.
and we have options.
Yeah,
Like, I am old enough to remember when I didn't have as many options as a woman as I do today.
yeah. Like what, like
But I've always been a woman.
rights and stuff, is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Hmm?
Like with rights and stuff, or what do you mean
Yeah,
by that? Yeah,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, just things that I felt that I could do the way men were able to treat me in an office that they couldn't possibly
Totally,
do
yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Being held back. I actually, um, there was one ad agency I worked for where the creative director hired me and another woman. She was an art director. I was a copywriter, and there's a small ad agency, and the owner blew up women,
Really?
women in something other than a secretarial
He's
position.
like, no way. Is that happening?
Yes, so
Yeah.
we each lasted maybe a year, and they fired us both within a week. So,
Jeez. Wow. Wow.
and I was the only one who'd won an award there, but yeah,
Jeez.
but I was a female, so that was no good.
Yeah.
So, I see how much we have advanced
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
women. But always as women, the idea has always been we can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
We can make choices, or we can do nothing. And this is the beauty of the liberating of women.
Mm-hmm.
We can be anything we want to be, including stay-at-home moms.
Yeah, if that's what you want to
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
we have those options now. You can be a doctor, or you can be a cashier, or you can be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe maybe you've got a trust fund and you can just sit around the pool.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you want to do, your your sex is no longer holding you back if you have the talent, the education, the wherewithal, or whatever it is you need to do that thing.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking about this, but maybe because I love space. But I was thinking, the early days of NASA, it was like all dudes, and now there's a lot of female astronauts, which is
Hmm.
cool. I mean, that's been, I guess, going on since the '80s with like the Challenger and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, they can kind of do whatever they want, and
Yeah, I mean, we were tokens here and there for a while, but now we're not tokens. We're kind of everywhere. But it's like now shifting back. Well, okay, but if you're a woman and you're doing X, well, are you really a woman?
yeah,
And there was this other mom who had that same situation where her daughter, out of the blue, claimed that she was trans, 12-year-old,
wow,
and wanted to live with her father and stepmother, who was an affirming mental health professional. And this affirming stepmother said, well, are you sure your mother's not trans? And I mean, the mom wore jeans,
mm,
you know, was a radical feminist, shaved half her head, what have you. She's just being the woman that she is,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, and it's I know it's something that uh gets to lesbian women. I've had Heidi Briones on the show a lot, and we talked about it, but it's just it's one of those things where like lesbians want a certain type of partner, and that doesn't really include a lot of the biology that trans people kind of bring into that, or
Oh, yeah,
may
that's
or
the
may not
crazy.
bring into that. But yeah, it's really, at least from a lot of the people I talk to, created divisions within the LGBT community because of all that stuff. And like I was gonna transition into sports, and I was curious, like too, did you ever? do any sports? Like, did you?
Me? No.
Okay.
I tried.
Because I was trying to,
It,
I was
huh?
trying to think of examples of this, and one of the things I remember, like I did karate when I was
Uh-huh.
in like eighth grade, or a couple years in there, and they would always pair me up with like a much older girl,
Mhm.
and I'm guessing now that's because of the physical. I was a lot younger, but we were kind of matched up muscular wise, or whatever
Mhm.
you want to call it, in sparring and stuff. And then another example I thought of was and this is getting really in the weeds, but I arm wrestled a girl when I was in elementary school that was much older than me, and we were
Mhm.
like pretty equal.
Mhm.
But I was just curious if you had like examples like that, or just any thoughts on like the sports stuff that's
Well,
going
I
on.
do.
And
And as far
yeah,
as me in sports, when I actually was the uh, fastest girl runner in my eighth grade Catholic girls' school class. And then we went to
went to like
the meet,
yeah,
and the public school girls kicked my ass.
okay. But you were the
So that was the end of
fastest, yeah, and
that
that
was the end of that.
yeah. Well, that's cool though. You were fastest in your school though.
Catholic school didn't count.
Okay.
Uh,
But yeah, what do you think
yeah.
about all that
Oh
stuff?
yeah, I mean, we've got boys competing with girls, and it's just not fair. I mean, everybody knows it's not fair. Identities don't play sports. Even if you are full on, yes, you believe that there are so-called trans kids,
Mhm.
whatever, fine. But that's their head.
Right. It's not their
Yeah.
muscles and their bone structure
Yeah.
and all that stuff.
Suddenly your body doesn't become a girl's body because you've decided that you're a
Yeah.
girl. So you can still play sports. There's no reason why you can't.
Mhm.
There's a boys team. When speaking to the mom of one of the girls who had to compete against Leah Thomas.
Oh, you
Uh,
talked to her?
hmm?
You talked to her?
I talked to the mother of someone who
Yeah.
competed
Wow.
against
Okay.
Thomas,
Okay.
not the
No, that's it.
trans
That's
athlete.
interesting. Yeah.
And the mom told me that um, her daughter, the one who had to compete against Thomas, has a very good friend who is also on her swim team
Mhm.
who identifies as trans. She's female, although she identifies as a boy. She's on the female team.
Mm.
Nobody has a problem with that.
Right.
It's not a problem with kids who identify as trans. It's a problem with you've got a male body.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know. It's always interesting because whenever I hear debates about this, it's usually people who haven't participated in sports. But yeah, like maintaining a fair competition is like the whole point of sports. And if you don't have that, there's no point in like competing because it doesn't,
Yeah,
there's no actual competition, like fair competition happening.
and these kids, I mean, the ones who are serious about it, as you know, they work so hard.
Yeah.
They give up birthday parties, they give up outings that, other
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
They're training.
Yeah. And I was just thinking it's an argument I hear a lot too is that like people think, you and I are framing this or anybody's framing this in a way that, oh, these kids are doing this to just gain an unfair advantage. And I'm sure you look at it the other way too, of like, I'm trying to protect the fairness of the other people, right? Because
Well, the
they want a
boy's a
fair
victim
competition.
too.
Yeah.
The boy has been convinced that he's a girl. He's not.
Yeah.
He's at risk of being medicalized. He's at risk of all of the physical impairments that come with that.
Hmm.
And those are very significant. And he's a kid. What
Yeah.
does he know about what he's going to want when he's an adult?
Right. Especially because I always hear, and you definitely know more than me about it, but that I believe it's the puberty blockers, but
Hmm.
something along the transitioning line destroys adult sexual function.
Oh, yes.
And
Um,
how can you throw that away when you don't even haven't experienced that yet,
yeah,
obviously.
but you ask an 8-year-old, well, do you care if you are going to have a micro penis? No.
Right.
Do you care if you'll never have an orgasm? What's an orgasm?
Right. It's not even
You know,
in their
sorry if I'm
consciousness.
making this an X-rated
No, no, I
podcast,
mean
but
I think they're valid questions to ask, because
yeah. I mean, do you care that you will be maybe 4 inches shorter than you might be? And then, yes, if you go directly from puberty blockers to cross-sex hormones, which I think it's in the 90s, percentage-wise, but it's something like 95% of kids do, you're sterile.
Yeah. It's just, yeah, it's just insane to me that because you're just throwing your future away if you want to have adult relationships. And
Mhm. And as you say, a great number of these kids are simply gay. But the tide is turning a little now because of the intense focus in school, in my opinion,
okay.
on pride
Mm-hmm.
and trans and celebrating and rainbow clubs. So they have rainbow clubs from pre-K. Now, what kid really understands what they're doing in
Yeah.
pre-K?
Yeah.
And
You
I was just speaking to a guy the other day. His 6-year-old daughter has been invited to a rainbow club.
6 years old.
6 years
Wow.
old.
Wow.
The school is in the South, so they don't indoctrinate them in the classes the way they do in
Yeah.
Portland, and Olympia, Washington is another big one. But they have a rainbow club, and the little girl is like, I want to go. You know what? There's going to be singing, there's going to be rainbows, there's
Mm-hmm.
unicorns. And the dad is like, you know, yeah, I want to take this from my kid. But he spoke to his wife and they decided, well, even if there were rainbows and unicorns and singing and they were going to teach our kid the Quran,
right.
we wouldn't go along with it. So now
Mm-hmm.
they've got to explain to this little kid why she's going to be deprived of this. But this is schools everywhere. This is in the South. So, and I've seen things like this in Louisiana, the Deep
Mm-hmm.
South, in Alabama, in Indiana, in places where you think, oh, red state, they're not doing it. Yes, they are.
Mm-hmm.
They are, and they're getting these kids so young, they're confusing them, and it's in biology books. When they're a little older, you look at the biology books and it'll say, oh, well, we used to think they were just male and female, but now we know there's a range and, there's sex and that's biological. There's gender, you can choose it.
Yeah. Well, it's thinking a couple things. One of the things, and I'm glad you had that. I'm sorry, not Tacoma. Where's that from? The
Oh, Olympia.
Olympia, the capital of Washington.
Yeah.
Because the question I wrote on here before we were talking is that I know that Washington State just recently passed a whole bill to incorporate a lot of queer or LGBT stuff into all curriculums of, I believe, all
Hmm.
ages. Which, like I think, in my opinion, I think there's some merit to gay rights and the history of that, but
Yep.
I just know that this is going to go way beyond that. And I'm just curious, like, do you know, is that because you just talked about a lot of that happening across the
Yeah.
country? Like, is that's pretty universal
Well,
across the U.S.?
yeah, this is happening all over the country, and in Olympia, it's everywhere, and it's not just incorporated in every class, but it's also there are posters
Right, right,
everywhere,
yeah.
and pride and Black Lives Matter, people think is strictly Black Lives Matter. Well, no, three of the Black Lives Matter principles for school are queer affirming, trans affirming,
Mhm.
and we dismantle the nuclear family.
Right, wow, yeah.
And,
Which is a
we
huge
find our own families.
yeah.
And this is one of the things that happens in schools too. I mean, I could go on forever about this, but in a Maryland school, which I know is far flung from here, people wanted to opt their kids out of these uh,
Mm,
gender ideology lessons, and they said, no, this is going to be in every class because this is part of the anti-bullying curriculum.
right, right. Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
just
does nobody ever get bullied for anything other than being
right.
trans?
Yeah. Well, and actually, we can talk about this maybe in a minute, but one of the things I was gonna bring up was, I don't know how much you know about I think, I should know the person's name, but the trans shooter manifesto and that whole thing. There was one trans shooter who
Yeah, that's Audrey Hale.
yeah, I believe
Yeah,
Tennessee, I believe it was. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. What I do know is that she identified as trans, and Um, it's believed that she was on testosterone, and I know that she wrote a manifesto that I didn't read, but here's what I do know. Um, Not about that case in particular, but in general about women on testosterone, because they've told me this, that it causes significant personality changes, it
Mm.
causes significant aggression. One woman I spoke to said that she felt great, when she first, oh, this was the best thing in the world. I love this. I've never felt so good because it kind of acts as an antidepressant almost.
Yeah, yeah.
And she said, and my wife thought I had a brain tumor.
I'm sure, yeah, it's almost like a emotional roller coaster is some,
Yeah, I mean, these are chemicals that our bodies are not designed to handle.
Yeah, and say in all cases, they're released by your body in a very natural way. And if
Hmm.
you do that artificially, strange things will probably happen. But the only reason I pointed that out was because, like you're saying, the bullying doesn't always go in one direction, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, actually, there have been kids, like you probably know in the Tualatin schools, where that boy who dresses as a girl was
Was
beating up
physically, yeah,
girls.
yeah, yeah. I think I remember hearing about that, yeah, like
Yeah.
6 months ago.
Ben Edel, who you might
Yeah.
know of,
Yeah, he's been
and
on
I
here.
spoke,
Yeah. Yeah.
good guy. And he's been looking into this a little, and he had gotten some earlier versions, not through a public records request, but leaked to him of
Mm,
some of the sexuality classes in Portland. And he and I spoke a little bit about this bulletin board that was in his middle school stepson's classroom. And it was, do you read banned books and what do you think of banned books? And
mm,
we all think banned books. And I used to have a button that said, I read banned books, right?
yeah.
Because, oh, don't
I
ban books,
I'd be really
you
curious
know?
about your opinion on that because I just feel like that's got interpreted in such a twisted way now
It
because
is.
but anyway, yeah, well, I'm curious about your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Because we're not talking To Kill a Mockingbird here.
Right. Which, by the way, I understand California hasn't banned that, but they've removed that from a lot of their curriculum
Oh, really?
because it's not woke enough,
Oh,
basically.
well, oh, that's right.
And
Well,
so
it probably wouldn't be.
I always pointed that as, hey, California kind of banned that book.
Well, yeah, and you know that the ACLU tried to ban Abigail Shrier's book.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's a big target. Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody's a book banner when it's in their interest to ban a book,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But parents are not, some are, of course, some will always try to ban everything. And that's one group of people, and they're not the people we're talking about.
yeah,
There are parents who are very upset that what their kids are getting in middle school amounts to soft porn.
yeah. And I would even say, yeah, like what you just showed is,
Oh, yeah.
if I had kids, I would not show that to them at that age.
Yeah. So in Bed Edel's bulletin board picture, there was this book is gay. And this is, an eighth grade class, I think, seventh grade, maybe. I think it was from last year, so it was probably seventh grade, but don't hold me to that. And they're really promoting these books, and one of them is This Book is Gay. And I took that out of the library because I wanted to know, well, what's the deal with this, along with Genderqueer and a few others. There's a chapter on the sex, he calls it, how to do it.
Okay.
So he gives information on how to give blowjobs,
Wow.
how to do, how
This
to
is
do hand jobs.
seventh grade. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you can understand why parents don't want their kids to have this book. Now, if you want your kid to have the book, fine.
Yeah. You can go
It's your kid.
buy it on Amazon or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you put it in, not just in a school library, but then you put a bulletin board up and you promote it to these kids like, oh, they don't want you to read these. What do you think about that? You're telling the kid, go read these.
Yeah. It's like reverse psychology. Yeah.
Yeah. And and then another one, All Boys Aren't Blue. And there's a very graphic scene, which, I of anal sex.
Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, very detailed,
Yeah. I'm sure people can Google it too. It'll a lot of this
and
stuff's
that's one of the books that was in, and then there's Genderqueer, which, tends to be quite graphic. And the other thing about This Book is Gay is that it promotes certain ideas about what it means to be trans.
Okay.
And, and how if you're gay, you don't really want to have a relationship because you want to have sex with as many people as possible. And,
Okay.
it's like, okay, maybe that's true. And you'll find out when you're an adult.
Right. Yeah. Just wait until you're the right age to do that.
Or
Yeah.
or maybe you'll find out on your own at 12 from your friends, but the schools should not be promoting this to
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
I really, this is going to sound weird, but I honestly think that if one kid tells another kid, that's fine. That's what kids do, right? But if your teacher tells you,
Hmm.
that's a little over the line to me.
Yeah.
That's
Very.
not the teacher's role.
Yeah, I would totally agree. It's very.
Hmm.
One thing I keep thinking too is, do you think this? Because I talk a lot on this show about mostly how school lockdowns cause this huge like pull out of kids, especially in PPS. Kids are dropping out. They're
Yeah. Or
parents
they're
are
not even
pulling them
showing
out.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, or putting them in other schools. Do you think this is driving that in a more nationwide sense of
I
getting kids out of public schools?
I don't know, in terms of the trans thing and COVID. I think COVID connects to a lot. You know about my book Siege. I think
Mhm.
a lot of what happened with the January 6th people came from frustration about COVID and from being
Right. Right.
locked down and from having their businesses closed
Hmm.
and from needing somebody to blame. And so COVID, or our policies around it, really changed so much.
Hmm.
And
I would say argue it broke public trust in education and the medical system in a
and
lot of
to a
ways.
certain extent in government information,
Hmm. Hmm.
because we now know that Fauci lied to us.
Yeah. Or
you
was,
know,
yeah, wrong about a
sorry,
lot. And
people.
yeah,
Yes, he
right.
did.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
And whatever his motives for doing that, I don't know. I don't know the man, but I know that what he said wasn't entirely truthful, and people figured that out.
mhm.
And then once they figured that out, it's what can we trust?
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, I agree with you in the sense that be I was pointing that out because once those connections are severed, people just have this boiling anger at some kind of government authority, and I think that's a good connection to make. But
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of just see that happening in the future, at least in Portland. Of PPS already has this huge budget shortfall,
Mm.
and enrollment just keeps dropping and dropping, and obviously taxpayers are leaving the area. So, but I kind of predict that happening at least on the West Coast of like a lot of parents pulling their kids out of public schools, not just for this reason, but that's like a part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's happening in the Olympia School District too, from my contact there.
Really, yeah,
They're closing schools. And I mean, there were insane things going there when they had to shut down fourth and fifth grade band or orchestra due to budget cuts. The superintendent made the claim that it was, well, it's white supremacist.
that's that's the reason why.
Because something, I don't
Right.
know, something about some kids couldn't make it without cutting, this really important thing, and but other kids could. It was just like everything is down to stupid identity politics
Yeah,
now.
it's an easy thing to blame, I guess, even though it
Yeah,
doesn't make sense a little
it made no
bit.
sense. It made no sense.
Okay, tell me as much as you want about your Northwest story. I always kind of ask people like, how did you grow up here? Did you come
Yeah.
back here from the East Coast or something? Or
No, I'm a New Yorker,
okay,
but then I moved to Florida.
ooh, I've always wanted to move there. I've never.
Yeah. Um, and I liked it a lot in some ways and didn't like it in others.
Okay,
And my son moved to Portland. And I was thinking of moving to Laconia, Washington,
I don't even know where that is. Where's
which is, well, you know where Anacortes is?
no? Is
Okay.
this Eastern Washington?
No, it's Western
Okay,
Washington. It's on the coast. It's a very adorable little, like, I mean, a size of this table town.
it's like a coastal town kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a very little town.
Okay.
Oh, not coastal, but like uh um
It's like in between.
in
Yeah.
between,
Yeah.
and just darling. town, and I really loved the area, but Alex was here, so I said, okay, I'll move to Portland. Um, and I did.
And what time? What year was that? Can I ask?
That was 2014.
Oh, okay, that's pretty recent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I just found that for the most part, although there was a lot to like in Florida, I didn't feel that intellectually I made the connections that I wanted to make.
In Florida.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I did more here. Hmm.
I could understand that. Yeah. What did you think when you first moved at that time? Because I'm always curious because I moved here in 2006, and there was kind of, at least for me, there was like this peak of Portland that was kind of around then,
Oh,
2014.
yeah.
Did it feel like that to you, or
Oh,
was
I
it?
thought Portland is wonderful when I first moved here,
Hmm.
and I'm really sad
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
what's happened to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the answer is, but I just feel like every decision that government has managed to be the wrong one, it
Yeah.
seems. I just,
Yeah.
I'm not a politician. I don't know about how they determine policy or how they budget or anything. You've
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
tons of people on
I was gonna
who
say there's a
are,
lot. You're not alone. A lot of people agree with you on that.
but it's just so sad.
Hmm.
And there does seem to be, money put aside to fix things, but nobody seems to know how to use it.
Yeah. It's definitely true with the county. They have a lot of money with homelessness that they don't use. But yeah, I'm right there with you, and it's I'm trying to help be a small part of this kind of comeback of
Mm.
Portland, and because I do think that, especially with this year, like I'm a big Renee supporter for mayor, and there's a lot of newer people on the scene who I think are moderate and a lot smarter about some of this stuff, and I hope that they kind of come into um, office. So.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing you're kind of like me. Like a lot of the guests I come here are right on the border of like, hey, I might move, but
Well,
I'm kind of stuck here, and like,
I'm gonna stay,
yeah.
but I'm just hopeful
Mm,
that smarter people, and it's not even smarter, it's just, because it's not that the people who are running it aren't smart, it's just that they aren't wise.
yeah, they're not looking at results, and there's no
Yeah,
capability there. It seems.
yeah. And it might be the form of government in Portland where nobody actually has responsibility for this neighborhood here.
Hmm.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. We'll see. This whole new city council this
Hmm.
year is gonna be wild. So, I was thinking before I get into these goofy questions, what can you tell people about your upcoming book that you want to say, like
Oh,
about
okay.
like when it's coming out or anything? I don't know.
Well, that I don't know
Okay,
because
okay.
I am still writing it because the publisher I'm speaking to wanted me to reframe things a little bit. So it means that I'm throwing away, about four finished chapters and
Yeah.
writing about four new ones. And you came from daily news. I
Mhm.
did not.
Right?
I
Yeah.
come from, I get a story and I research it night and day. And if it's a magazine article, I have something that I know everything I could possibly know about, and I'm ready to write it 2 months later.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I totally get you.
So it's like, other people, their daily news report, they interview someone, they're on the air.
Yep. Yep.
Not me.
And then you're on to the next thing the next day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So I really take my time, and when I find something new, then I have to think about, well, what does this mean? How does this connect with this other thing? Does it connect with this other thing? Is it something I really need to know about? It might take me 3 days to decide I don't need this.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know how long, but he's talking, out in 6 months to a year, I would say
Oh, okay,
closer
okay.
to a year.
Okay. Well, that's not too long in the grand scheme of things. I guess
Hmm.
next year people can look forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go through these goofy questions really quick. let's say you're parking somewhere like you just did. Do you pull in normally or do you back in the car?
Back in.
You back in?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
New York girl.
I've been, yeah, okay. You're used to the streets and stuff. Yeah. I've been doing a bit more backing in. I usually do that every day now. Um, let's see. Which piece of fruit do you think you could throw the farthest if you just chucked a piece of fruit across a football field?
Well, I think a banana would be able to be thrown like a frisbee, kind of, right?
Thank you. Thank you for, you're the first one that's ever agreed with me on that. Because
Oh,
I think a banana too. I just feel like somehow that thing's gonna use physics and gravity to propel itself
yeah,
forward. And
that's the thing.
yeah.
It's more the physics than the arm.
Yeah. Okay.
hmm
Um, do you like crunchy or smooth peanut butter, or maybe you don't like peanut butter?
I love peanut butter, and it has to be fresh peanut butter.
Like if homemade?
No, I get them in the machines in the supermarket, and you just,
I didn't even know you could do that.
oh
You
yeah, it's
pour it in there?
the only kind of peanut butter I will eat, and I love it.
So that's like okay,
So they
because I
have
go
this.
to New Seasons almost every day in Vancouver where I work. Is it
Oh,
like that? Like you like tap?
well, you have a Winco not too far from here,
Hmm.
and they have them in Fred Meyer too, and they're just little plastic bins full of peanuts.
Oh, okay.
And you put your little plastic container under the chute,
Yeah.
and you click on, and it makes you peanut butter.
What?
Yes.
I have never even heard of this.
Yes.
You're
Oh,
like this is
you
like
will
breaking
never
news.
eat that awful homogenized
Yeah,
peanut butter
I
again.
get the palm oil no stir stuff. That's what I
Yeah.
like. Crunchy. But
Yeah.
you said smooth? What do you
Well,
think?
that's how it comes out.
It's just yeah, yeah.
If it came out crunchy, I'd be even happier.
Okay, okay. But yeah, you blew my mind with that. I'll have to seek this thing out now and see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a favorite type of French fry? Do you like curly fries, regular fries,
I don't eat
regular
French
fries?
fries.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
Not even
Well, I'll eat
tater
sweet
tots or
potato fries.
okay,
Yeah, that
okay,
would
that
be my
counts.
favorite.
That counts.
Yeah.
Um, do you you probably don't have? Do you have a favorite fast food?
Fast food. I don't really eat
If you
fast
don't eat
food.
French fries, I'm guessing you don't.
I
Yeah,
don't eat fast
that's
food.
okay. So last or a couple episodes ago, somebody mentioned like they like burritos from like a truck or anything. Is there something like that that
Oh,
you?
well, food cart food is not fast food,
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
know.
I
Yeah.
love food cart food.
Is there like a favorite thing like that you have?
Well, I do like the Indian one at
Mm,
Cartlandia.
okay, the 80-second
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
that sounds good. I've never been there.
yeah.
Check that out. Let's see. Let's say you're going into an ice cream place. Do you go waffle cone, regular cone, cup?
Regular,
You
regular
like that
cone.
regular
Oh
cone?
yeah,
Okay,
the
yeah.
waffle cone has no flavor.
Really?
No, no.
Okay. I do like the kind of crispiness of the regular cone.
Yeah,
It's like a
but
classic
it's got flavor, and I assume they make it with brown sugar or something. But yeah,
something. And
definitely.
what are you putting in there? What's your
A nutty ice cream,
okay?
something,
Some less
like,
texture in there.
yeah, a pistachio Rocky Road,
All right.
something. They can never make chocolate ice cream chocolately enough for
You
me.
want it
So,
more? Yeah.
yeah, so I'm a chocoholic. I know my chocolate, and I have not yet. Chocolate gelato is good,
Yeah.
but the regular chocolate ice cream just always misses the mark
They
for
need to
me.
turn the chocolate up on. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Uh,
Turn it up to 11.
okay. Do you keep your butter out or you keep it in the fridge? Or maybe you don't. Maybe you don't even.
Well, I used to keep it out, but for some reason I've been putting it in the fridge. I wonder if that means something.
I don't know. Most people, it's like, oh, if you bake with it, you'll keep it in there or something. But
I do bake with
okay,
it.
well, maybe that's why.
Mm. But
Um,
that's not the reason, but I'll use it.
okay. Do you like string cheese?
What cheese? Green?
String cheese? Do you like string cheese? The kind that
Uh, I don't dislike it.
okay. I have a big debate about because I don't string it, I don't peel it.
hmm
If you were to eat it, would you do that or
Oh, I'd peel it.
okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Well, it has no flavor. It's got to have something to it.
Okay. That's a good point. Um, I'm saying this because I just had the guy who runs the Bigfoot Museum on here, but do you believe in Bigfoot?
Um, if Bigfoot believes in me, I'll believe in Bigfoot.
All right. I like that answer. If you had a gigantic brand you could run, if you were forced to run one, is there something you'd want to do, like a magazine or something? They still have some magazines around, or
Um,
a journalist outlet or something, or
I just, not really.
You could be your own
I just get
publishing.
obsessed with certain subjects and I just want to write about
Okay,
them.
okay.
That's about it.
Well, that's cool. I'm kind of like that too. I'll do a deep dive into one thing, and then like a month later, I'm like on to
Hmm.
something else, whatever. Um, we kind of did this already, but is there? I always ask people, is there a good? Did you have a good meal locally somewhere, or is there a good local business you want to shout out, like
Oh, what?
a local business of some kind that you
Um,
had a good time at recently that you want to shout out? If not, that's fine too.
mm, well, I would say some of the best food I've had recently is farmhouse Thai.
Okay, I don't know what that is. That's
Uh,
Portland.
yeah, that's
Okay.
in Portland. They have a couple of different locations, and gee, I can't think of anyone at the moment. I really would like to give somebody a boost, but
No, that's cool. I've never heard of that one farmhouse.
hmm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, well, cool. Yeah, remind people get like where I always tell people where can they find you? You got your website,
Oh,
you're on
my
Twitter.
website. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's
AnitaBartholomew.com.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, and check out Anita's books if you haven't. Remind me again, Under Siege, it was a
Oh, Siege.
Siege.
Siege is about the January 6th
Mm-hmm.
siege of the Capitol. And
And then you have
again, it is, I tried to be nonpartisan
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
And
It really does sound like we were talking before the show. It really does sound like you
yeah,
made a
I
serious
was
effort to do
really
it.
fascinated by all these people coming to the Capitol, believing that the election had been stolen.
Mm-hmm.
And they were passionate about it. And um, I'm not allowed to say this by my liberal friends, but I felt sorry for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not allowed to say this because my conservative friends don't agree with this, but a lot of them deserve to be in prison.
Mm, yeah.
But it was just such a sad thing.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
interesting because I was going to ask you that before of like I know there's a lot of debate around some of the sentencing and stuff that these people, but I'm kind of with you on that like because like I was telling you before all the riots I've seen in Portland, when you have riots, people are definitely committing crimes in those
yeah.
situations. And so it's like I'm not when people debate that stuff, I'm like should some of these people should definitely be sentenced for something
Yeah,
because I
they
think there's
beat people up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I think there's an attitude out there, but like, well, there was nothing really happened and blah blah. And it's
Oh,
like,
there are people, and I got to know them a little bit who are, like Sergeant Aquilino Gornell, who had to retire because of his injuries.
wow, yeah,
Uh, Very badly beaten up. And Mike Fanone got very badly beaten up.
hmm
Other
hmm
people got very badly beaten up. This one woman, I'm trying to think of her name, hit her head, concussion, still has memory loss. But, there were all kinds of people who went there. There were people who went with the intent of storming the building, of getting through the secret tunnels, and perhaps who knows what they planned to do there. But they were intent on hurting others.
hmm
And they were people who didn't even know what building they were in.
right,
They were just
the
there. And
the
they didn't even intend to go inside and,
yeah,
whoa, here we go. I'm following the crowd.
and it's such a contrast between those two
I
people.
mean,
Yeah,
it's like it wasn't one thing. So it wasn't one wonderful group of patriots and it wasn't one evil group of people. It was a lot of people.
yeah,
And they had a lot of different reasons for being there. They did a lot of different things. Um, I feel very sorry for a couple of the people who got really long sentences who didn't hurt anybody.
hmm
And then there are people who hurt people, and I think maybe they didn't get punished enough.
So there's an
So,
imbalance there a little bit.
yeah, I mean, it's almost like the judges felt they had to kind of even out sentences. And, the Oath Keepers in particular, I mentioned before we went on, um, they actually thought they were going there to protect Trump. they thought that somebody
Physically,
planned,
yeah.
yeah, they thought somebody planned to storm the White House
Mm,
and do something to him, who knows what. And when they got there, the doors had already been opened. People had already smashed their way through. And so, yes, cops were beaten up, but they didn't do that.
yeah.
They marched up the steps, and they might have looked scary. But, I saw enough video of them and I saw enough of the evidence from the trial that, I mean, these were mostly former soldiers, and right now they're cosplaying soldier,
Right. Yeah.
So they've got their hand on the other guy, and they get in there and they're taking selfies, what have you.
Hmm.
It,
Yeah.
uh, it was like, they didn't deserve the sentences they got. Sorry. Um,
Well, no, it's fascinating to me because you're making me. I'll probably read it. I'll show this too. But thank you for bringing a copy of it because it's like I don't know as much as I should about it, and if people want to learn more, I think it just sounds like you've done a really good job of
oh,
breaking down
thanks.
everything and covering all sides of it and stuff. So yeah, check out this book, Siege. And I want to mention you have another book too, right? Or
Yeah. There's something to prove, which was I wrote for a doctor,
okay.
and it was her second memoir. The first one was made into a movie. The second one wasn't, but it was a better one because I wrote it. And then I wrote The Midget's House,
Okay,
which is
that's the one I was thinking. That's like a straight up narrative
that's a
book, right?
novel,
Yeah.
yeah, and that was about my imagined history of my house in Sarasota, which was the most adorable house on earth. I loved that house, but there was something spooky about
Oh,
it.
well, you kind of piqued my interest now. Yeah.
So, I tried very hard to find out what the true history of it was. And nobody knew anything because Sarasota doesn't keep building records. And, it was mostly in the earlier stages before air conditioning. Nobody lived there around year round. And
Hmm.
so it's just kind of a tourist town. And by the time they kept records, my house was not on it.
I
And,
see.
there were legends that Ringling built my house and the one next to it for his midgets. Well, I pretty quickly
Oh, okay.
found out that wasn't true.
But that's okay. It's so funny
But
because I was thinking the name comes from you because you're kind of short, but but
not that short.
I see what's going on. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting though. Yeah. It has like a Ringling legend connection.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does.
So check those out on Amazon or I'm sure on our website you can find them
Uh-huh.
too.
Well, on Amazon, yeah.
That's the
I
best
don't
place.
I don't sell anything from my
Okay.
website. Yeah.
um, well, yeah, thanks so much. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap it up here?
No, thank you. I mean, we've had a good conversation. I really appreciate your having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to your book coming out.
Oh,
I'll
thank
be
you.
the first to pre-order, or one of the first to pre-order.
Well, I'll send you one.
Yeah.
All
All right. Thanks so much.
right. Thank you, Andy.